I hope that GIJN will benefit you in this session the best way. I will introduce myself. I'm Majdoulin Hassan, the Arabic editor for GIJN. We are here the Global Investigative Journalism Network in the second phase for sustainability workshop. Last year we came and we had our first workshop about how to make newsrooms in MENA region sustainable in terms of practicing investigative journalism. So we realized that we need to move the level of conversation to the next phase. So we decided to have another workshop tackling the sustainability for the newsrooms in the MENA region, but we try to make it more practical, more hands-on training. And we divide the conversation for two parts. The first one, we will talk about fundraising, and the second part, we'll talk about how the successful business model and business planning for the new startups and investigative journalism organizations. So the first part, we'll start with the fundraising thing. And I'm so happy to introduce my mentor and my colleague, Caroline Joberg. Did I just, yeah? She's the fundraiser director for GIJN. She used to work with the Atlantic and the NPR. Actually, for my experience with Caroline, I'm a journalist. I came from journalistic background. I don't have any experience about fundraising, but she let me feel that I should be involved in this process. So you will realize that when she will start to talk. And in this also part, we bring two great partners, ARIJ, Yazan Abarrouz, everybody knows him, and Ahmed Hamdo from Siraj. They will co-share this workshop in this part. So I will just give the conversation to Caroline.
Engineer. Majdoulin is being enormously modest here. She is our greatest weapon. So we are very grateful that you all have sent her to us. I'm Caroline Jarbo. I am Development Director for the Global Investigative Journalism Network. As you know, GIJN is not an outlet, but it's a hub for the world's investigative journalism organizations, and we have 178 members in 82 countries. And I have about 20 years of experience working with independent investigative media organizations to raise support, mostly from major institutional and private family foundations in the United States. Also worked for ICIJ, so I have some experience with the European and other funding vehicles that we have. And I worked with the Atlantic most recently before coming to GIJN about a year ago. Along the way, I've developed a specialization in working with editorial staff and translating editorial priorities and business priorities into an actionable vision for approaching funders, conducting grants, and telling the story of impact. And this is what I really love to do. So I'm delighted to meet all of you. Please, let me know and approach me with any questions, and find me on Skype, find me at home. So I've worked with a lot of journalists over the years to translate their editorial visions into fundraising pitches and proposals. And if there's anything I found about journalists, is that they think that the case for the project that they want to raise support for, they think that this is self-evident, that this project or this outlet should just go forward. Not the case. If you want to raise philanthropic support for journalism, whether it's for an investigative series or a data editor or just launching a startup, the first place that you need to start is by developing a fundraising mindset. You need to know yourself and your organization. What is your structure and how do you work? And if you're starting out, if you're doing a startup organization, you should, these are the questions that you need to determine. What are your values and why are you doing this work? Can you say it in a sentence? Know the field around you. Why does the market need you? Why now? How do you compare with the competition? Can you say it in a sentence? So what you need to do, this is what we in graduate school used to call going meta on the subject, to be able to stand outside of it and not go so caught up in your work or your story that you can't kind of, set it aside and sort of be able to talk about it from the outside. But I want to go a little further at this point and get into what the first U.S. President Bush called, maybe this is only the older folks are going to remember this, the vision thing. So now that you've done this inventory of what you want to do and why you want to do it, you need to take those points and craft the story you will tell to fundraise for your project, both in in-person meetings and in proposals. And to do this, you need to ask yourself 2 questions. What is the crystallizing moment for your work? What is your origin story? If you're an established organization starting a new project, set the stage. What's the rhetorical turn? Human beings, if you know anything about philosophy, and there's this great concept from the philosopher Martin Buber about the I-thou relationship. You talk to your prospective funder as another person, and you convince them of your human qualities, and you see them as another person who is going to have an interest in you. So telling that story, embedding your project in embedding the budget, everything that you want to do, embed that into a story. So what's the crystallizing moment for your work? What is the ethos that you bring to the project? That's a term from rhetoric. It means a good person reasoning well. What's your credibility? How can you be, if anybody was in the cross-border investigation session yesterday with Marina, Walker Guevara, and Majd, and others, talking about the whole idea of being a trustworthy journalist and what happens when you're not trustworthy. Convincing people of your trust that you can take their money and use it faithfully to do what you said you were going to do. You need to believe in this, and you need to demonstrate this about yourself. You need to know why you're doing it. And I call this, is going to sound very American, evangelism for investigative journalism, the good news. Once you've thought through this process and know how to tell the story, I suggest that you write a concept paper, an overview of why you are asking for money, whether it is for a series on climate or to get back office support for fundraising and better accountants or a data report or whatever you want to do. And here's what that is. In a tight 1 to 3 pages, you cite the condition that you've identified, why it's urgent to respond to it now. That's your background or your rationale, the reason that you're doing the work. Then you give the discussion, you've been thinking about this, you give the discussion for why you are the one to report on it. What's your experience, your skill, or the kind of insight that you provide? And part of the ethos, part of your ethos, is that you're going to sweat the small stuff and you're going to do your work carefully with their money. Finally, how will you conduct this project? I'm not going to get into a big discussion about proposal writing at this point, but you should know what activities will you conduct? What's the timeline? How long is it going to take? How many stories are you going to do? Or what's going to be the output from your new hire? Those are your targets and your timeline. What kind of realistic overall impact or goal do you want to do? How are you going to measure that? What are the metrics? And then finally, to get back to that vision thing, what's the social outcome you hope your work will contribute to? I think I've seen lots of proposals that are not always so great before, and I think being really straightforward and clear about what you know you can do and how you're going to show that you can do it. I think the concept paper is great, even if you're an established organization. I know this is especially valuable if you're starting a new project or if you're a startup organization. I think it's really valuable for established organizations. In the time I've been at GIJN, I sit down and I kind of try to refresh the language and sort of rethink the approach every single year, because if you're a learning organization, constantly being able to sort of think about where your heritage, where you came from, but where you're going to go, and demonstrating that. Once you've done all of this thinking, then be able to distill it down into a pitch paragraph. This is what you'll use in emails or phone calls to get a meeting with donors. But before you try to fundraise, you need to make sure that you're ready. And I'm going to cite a methodology that Bridget Gallagher, who was our fundraising predecessor at GIJN, that she uses. And in terms of being prepared, the 3 P's of effective fundraising, the first of which is preparation. Are you prepared to go out and ask people for money? Can you accept gifts? Are you registered appropriately? Do you have accounting and compliance infrastructure so that you can actually show where your money's going and that you're legal? When I worked for the Atlantic in the United States, it's actually a for-profit company, and I had to do quite a little research on figuring out how a private foundation or philanthropic vehicle could give legally to a for-profit company. Know your own data. How much money do you have? What's the project budget? And how much can you realistically do? I think for all of you, don't, and you'll hear this a little bit later this morning, don't overpromise and underdeliver. Just be really thoughtful about what you can do. How do you measure impact? How are you able to do that? So now that you have that vision in hand that's buoyed by your credibility and your knowledge, you need to research the donors you want to approach and start going after them. The research may be closer than you think. It's a truism that the people who give you money already are probably going to be your best givers, and continuing to follow them and cultivate them. Mutual connections, partners, intersection with other grantees of other organizations. I would say you should regularly scan your colleagues' funders lists and annual reports. If someone's doing similar work to you, take a look at who their funders are, and I guess it's probably not appropriate for me to say try to steal them, but certainly try to make contacts with them. And I think thinking about the larger community, you're building a family here. I mean, I think that these literary terms can help you sort of reach out to other people. You're building your family, you're building your community. There are lots of great fundraising resources. Candid, Inside Philanthropy, Alliance magazine has some of the European Foundation Centers magazine, and has lots of things in Africa and MENA. But also, you can see things in the New York Times or in other papers on the news, and there's so many resources out there. One of the things that's frightening about this digital world is that you can find what people's capacities are and how to make contacts with them. So here are a few MENA-related research leads for you, and it gives you an opportunity to make your case. It's one of the things that I found out is that U.S. foundations have directed a relatively small amount of support for the Middle East region compared to, say, Africa, but I think that that's changing, and that gives you an opportunity to present your work. Here's my breakdown of approaches that you and your organizations can take. Now, I don't have a slide for this, so you need to listen closely. For you startups, I would say start at your local embassies, especially the case for startups. Often embassies have pools of funding that they can give out to help local media to launch new projects or to get fellowships, hire experts. And I think that, it's a pretty obvious group of people whom you should approach: the Scandinavian embassies, Germany, Netherlands, France, United States, UK would be a good place for you smaller startup organizations. Diaspora funders, too. There are family foundations for Middle East countries in the United States and elsewhere. There are some foundations that are focused on intra-Muslim relations and conflict resolution. Some web research should reveal those to you. International aid organizations, as ARIJ's example has shown, once you've really established a track record of performance in reporting, you can establish relationships with groups like CETA, NORAD, the Danish, and seek support from them. And then there are obviously the big international media foundations, like the Open Societies Project on Independent Journalism, the Luminate Group. And then finally, I think a lot of you can look at foundations that support particular thematic areas. If you report on a particular subject, you can go to a foundation that, say, supports work on human trafficking, the environment, women's rights, LGBTQ issues. The strength of the work that you've already produced will help your credibility. In seeking support from a thematic foundation, a lot of times, perhaps they will even give you general support to since you cover their issues. The danger in going after targeted thematic support is that you will overstretch yourself and you won't cover your basic core costs. So you can structure budgets in such a way that you are collecting sufficient support to support your back office operations. But it is a danger. And the worst thing you can do is to go for foundation support, because you definitely need money. And I worked for an organization one time that we promised an entire year of reporting on health information technology because we needed the money. So don't do that. So you've done your research, you've got your pitch paragraph, and you get a meeting or call. Here's your moment to evangelize. And not to talk down to anybody here, this is the second in Bridget Gallagher's P's. Employ your social skills. Again, with some additions for me, Bridget's information. Spend more of the meeting talking and listening, listening rather than talking. Pay attention, look at people in the eye. Again, all the preparation that you've done before, be able to cite the impact of your work, who your current donors are, what your budget is. And again, I always bring it back to storytelling, the value proposition. Why this? What is this? Why now? Why you? And if you sort of skip down through here, how does the donor benefit? You know you need money, but you needing money is not going to get them to give you any money. This is how you use your storytelling to inspire them to sort of come alongside you in your vision. What are they going to get out of it? What are their essential values that you're appealing to? But listen to them. You'll find their language, you'll find their story, and that will intersect with your story. Thank them. Listen to them and thank them. So whether it's a meeting or a conference call before it ends, know what you do next and thank them. And keep thanking them and track them as you go. Establish a cultivation plan, thank them, be in touch with them, follow up every 4 to 6 weeks. So optimally what you should have is what's called a moves management system. I'm going to go back through here. Thank them, be in touch via a moves management plan, and follow up. Stay in touch, know exactly what the follow-up is, and be ready to submit the proposal. And even if they say no, keep them in your plan so that you can follow up with them later on. So finally, you get the grant, or the donor writes you a check. All the practices that you've done, once you develop them, are self-reinforcing. Communicate with your donor, be clear and honest, and most of all, you do what you said you were going to do and seek to measure the impact, tell the story of the change your work has accomplished. Even if someone says, I am never going to give you $1 single ever again, stay in touch with them. They're part of your community, they're part of your family, they're part of your story. You never know when anything's going to change. Think of these people as the sort of stable of your supporters who are going to help you tell the story of your work into the future. These can be some of the most rewarding relationships you have. Thank you.
Yes. Now I think I would love to introduce GIJN. GIJN will have a conversation with Caroline. He will talk about ARIJ most successful stories and narratives, and also he will talk about how can they tackle the next step towards fundraising. And I think I believe that he has good tips. He would love to share it with you guys. So.
Thank you, Majduleen. Thank you, Caroline, for the interesting presentation. Thank you all for coming here at 9 a.m. Just like before we start, can I get the feel of the room, by show of hands, who here is a startup organization or in charge of fundraising in a startup organization? Okay, we have a few in the room. And the rest, I can see a few faces here who are already into fundraising, their main job, in well-established organization. Thank you for being here as well. As you all probably know, I work for ARIJ, and I've been their business development specialist over the last 3 years. during this period, I got to work hands-on, like on fundraising with Rana Sabbagh, who is really a master when it comes to fundraising. And I think like most of the stuff that Caroline has mentioned were like active steps that Rana has always implemented over the years. And that's in part what made ARIJ like reach the point where it is right now. So I'm gonna try to not go like repeat all of the points that Caroline mentioned. And I'm gonna just share a few tips that I have found to be very relevant when it comes to fundraising in this part of the region. As Caroline mentioned, like really you have to know your points of strength, like what makes you unique, like why would people come and work with you or give you money over anyone else. And if you're an organization, you're saying that like I'm just another platform, I'm just another news platform, that doesn't make you any different. People will not give you money for that. But so you always have to look for your niche, what's your unique selling point. The second thing, and it's very important when it comes to building relationships with your donors or with your partners, is to always under promise and over deliver. Do not like make promises that you know that you will you can't keep, or if you feel uncertain about like a certain promise you're making to a donor, it's better that you do not make that promise. Like always, like when you're planning your project, make sure what you put in your proposal is what you will deliver on, even if you believe that you could do more, like just slash it a little bit so that when you actually do the project, you over deliver on your promises. This way, a relationship of trust will be built between you and your donor, between you and your partner, and they wouldn't have the higher expectations. And then, when you fail to meet that target that you have set, well, they would be disappointed. No, like go for the opposite way. Under promise, like say, if you think you can actually do 6 outputs, then promise 4. And then when you deliver in your reporting and you say that you have done 6 outputs, this is much more healthier for the relationship and for your own reporting. Also, it reduces the pressure on your team. The next tip that you should know is that you have to build trust with your donors and partners through your actions, not only through your words. Like you could be excellent at promoting your own organization, but then if like the outcome when you get that money and you do not deliver on your project, your donor will be hesitant to give you money again or to increase the support. So you build that trust between you and your donor consistently and in a persistent way every time, that like your organization will always be the organization that delivers. And this is something that ARIJ has been excellent at across the years, is that like any other organization, we may face issues during the project. Obstacles will be made because we operate in a region that it's really difficult to do investigative journalism. However, like this trust that our donors and partners have, is that ARIJ will always come through, will always deliver, is what makes people like our organizations trust us and wants to work with us. The next is to always come up with new and innovative ideas, to come up with new projects. Like if you stick to the same old plan every time and you do not grow or you do not change or you do not experiment with new ideas, your organization eventually will reach a point where it becomes obsolete. And this is something that we face on a daily basis at ARIJ. Like we started in 2006 doing investigative training and production of stories with print. Then we went into video and TV, and then we added multimedia and digital stories. And we always try to find new ways of how to do things. And actually, we came up, like ARIJ came up with an idea, and the founder of that idea is sitting here with us, Mr. Hamoud Mahmoud, who came up with the idea like when he faced a need that there is no data in the Arab world and we need to establish a database. And it was Hamoud's idea and Hamoud's leadership that brought that data disk into ARIJ, that has grew to collect data from all over the Arab world, and that data resource continues to grow to this day, even after Hamoud went on to his next adventure, like his legacy still continues at ARIJ. So it's these innovative and bold ideas that makes you grow and makes you evolve into like a well-established idea. So don't be afraid of trying bold new ideas that could potentially have like develop into its own thing.
Here, can I just ask a question just
Yes.
for you? You know, I think people would, because I worked, you know, very closely to Yazan, and I know how much he has that great business mind. And I think that would benefit everybody is sitting in the room. So I want you to share them a successful project you worked yourself in, and how you gain your partner trust, and how you come up, you know, with bigger projects.
Okay, so one of the most important thing about like having a business mindset in a nonprofit is it's all about trust. It's about building this relationship between you and your partner, or between you and your donor. And when I joined ARIJ, there were instances where we were meeting potential partners and potential donors who were ready to actually give us money and to give us a lot of money. But then that's like that wouldn't be our approach. Is like, instead of like taking that big money instantly and then figuring out how to spend it, or how to put it into which project, we always like say like, no, let's test our relationship with a new partner by going for one project, a pilot project we'd call it. So we do this one project. It has specific objectives with specific outputs on a short-term timeline. So we'll do it in a year. And one of our partners, actually, I'd say this case study, like one of our partners, when we first approached, we knew that we want to work together. So we focused on doing one project for the year 2017, and then we'll test the relationship. Because it's not only us, like they're seeing us, like viewing if we are going to deliver to them, but also it's for us, will this partner add a lot of more administrative work? Will they want to be hands-on in a way that goes beyond the levels of the partnership? Will they try to take over the project? So it's a two-way relationship between us and the partner. And in 2017, for example, we've with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, we focused on doing one workshop with clear outputs, like it was a mobile journalism workshop. And from that workshop, once we concluded that workshop, we tested the relationship. We saw that we actually have harmony in working together. We discuss points, and we set up action points on how to proceed, and we agree on the way forward. So after the project, we came and we said like, okay, let's now discuss long term. We have tested the relationship, and we know that we like to work with each other, and we want to do more. So with that, we came up with a 3-year agreement with the funds distributed over 3 years, with clear specific activities and clear specific goals. So every year now, like instead of doing one workshop, we're going to do 2 training workshops, and we're going to focus on concluding the university's manual that we just launched in January, and that we will publish a policy paper on a topic that's related. So with that, like the funding grew like from an X number to triple that time. So also across, like when we finished 2018 and we delivered on the first part of that 3-year project, the relationship grew stronger. So with that, they were like, whenever they had the chance to support other activities, even from outside that agreement, they were always happy to come and work with us, because in a way the relationship is working. We're not adding more work to theirs, and they are not adding more work to ours. It's a healthy relationship, and they know that ARIJ will always deliver on the promises, and that we are meeting and exceeding their expectations when it comes to the project itself. And that's like, I think, how we built that relationship, and how we built that trust. And it's not only with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, it was also applied to other partners that came in. And you've seen how many we've been growing over the last few years, where like the ARIJ conference keeps on growing as well. And I think that's what's really important, is trust.
You can actually see that Yazan has sort of set a sequential, or that ARIJ has set a sequential path for doing the work and measuring the work, and then taking the impact storytelling of the work to feed into future and expanded work, so that you can kind of track the movement of ARIJ's expansion through time through that. And he's kind of set that forth very well. Is there anything else you'd like to say about ARIJ's impact or planning for the future? And I'm going to lead into my particular question that sort of following up on our conversation from last night.
So yeah, it's like I'd say whatever you do, like no matter how great you are at fundraising, as long as like if you do not like build the product right, or if you do not develop your own capacity to deliver on these projects, in 1 or 2 years, like nobody will give you money. So always yes, you have to focus on raising those funds, but you also have to focus on to deliver on the promises that you have made. And the two come connected with each other, like otherwise you'll become obsolete very quickly.
So now, Liasan, let me see if I can rephrase your question to me last night, but correct me if I'm wrong. That you had asked me, we've heard all about ARIJ's great record of performance, but also how, I think you were asking me about what might be some recommendations about how to expand support right now in a time of change. Did I get that correct?
Yes, right now ARIJ is working and actively developing its new strategy from 2021 to 2025, and we're always like discussing and talking to our partners and our donors and our colleagues at other organizations on how can we, like as ARIJ, like continue to develop, and how can we also come up with more like new creative ways to bring in new revenue channels to ARIJ, and that was like what I wanted to actually ask you.
Good. Well, I've had some thought. I do have some thoughts for you here. So ARIJ has had some dedicated funders over the year, but is it a position where they need and want to add some new ones? So what are the best places for you to go? And this is what we talked about last night, and which I'll sort of clue you in on now. I would say before you even get to the point of seeking out those new funders, and I know when you're a hammer, you think everything is a nail. That's what it's going to sound like. I think this is a great time for ARIJ to go back and do your narrative planning and messaging. Go back to the whole concept paper. You have a new executive director coming on. ARIJ's plans for growth need to be, again, embedded in a story that you can tell to donors. So you can allude to your history. You do have this great history, but it gives you that rhetorical fulcrum to say, okay, we have this, ARIJ did this really legendary landmark work in the region, but where does it need to go now? What conditions have changed on the ground? What do we have on our staff capabilities now that allow us to go to the next level? So I think kind of having an internal agreement on that to figure out where you're going in the future. Then you can involve your prospective donor emotionally. Because clearly you already have a pretty good handle on the organization and the budgets and the costs. So they're reaping the benefit of having that great internal infrastructure now. One of the things we also talked about was that donors might not just want to give to ARIJ as ARIJ, and you can ask me any questions that you have about that, but that ARIJ, it's not just ARIJ the organization, but ARIJ as the kind of role of combating corruption, promoting the rule of law, accountability. And I think those values are a really good way to start. I wanted to propose 4 ways that I think that ARIJ can use this moment to start new support. As I said before, starting with their current donors, even if they think that they might lose some. Cultivate their current donors, and if they're going to lose donors, ask them to introduce them to their colleagues. Say, okay, I know that you may be giving us a tie-off grant, but who among your colleagues can you introduce us to that could support our work? I think just judging from looking at this fantastic conference support and some wonderful long-term supporters, but I think that ARIJ could have more capacity with Global Foundation interested in the rule of law and democracy, such perhaps Luminate Group, other Omidyar groups. And again, training, that you guys do training in the thematic areas. Could you say like a sentence or so about that?
Caroline, I think we should move to the next speaker because we're...
Okay. No, that's great. Well, okay, then I'll make one more thing.
Okay.
I would say the last thing, they should get thematic support for their trainings in areas like climate, property rights, LGBTQ. Start an individual donor program with everybody on your mailing list. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Yazan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for the great recommendations.
Actually, now I would love to introduce another also great journalist, Ahmed Haj Hamdo. He's the co-founder of SIRAJ, Syrian Investigative Journalism Unit. I think we wanted to bring SIRAJ here because we know that SIRAJ represent most of our audiences here. They want to start up new projects, but and they have great reporting records, but they don't know, they lack of funding, they lack of resources, and I think the starting is really difficult and hard. So we want to give them a chance to showcase their work and to take the proper advice. So yeah, you can start.
يعطيكم العافية جميعا وشكرا مجدولين وشكرا لجميع الحضور. أنا أحمد حاج حمدو، صحفي سوري، مؤسس مشارك بالوحدة السورية الصحافة الاستقصائية سراج. شكرا كثير للجميع. أنا بدي حابب أحكي عن سراج أول شيء كهيكلية، كونه البعض منكم يمكن بيعرف، البعض منكم ما بيعرف، فحابب أعطي شرح تقديم سريع عنها. سراج هي أول وحدة سورية متخصصة بإنتاج صحافة استقصائية فقط. ما بنشتغل شيء ثاني غير الصحافة الاستقصائية. المشروع تأسس بنوفمبر 2016 تقريبا، يعني من 3 سنوات.
3 years ago, and it was for one reason. We are a group of Syrian journalists. All of us received training from ARIJ and worked through investigations over the past year, and we have opined that in Syria, because of the conflict and violations, infringements, there has been a huge influx of information. It has been just a niche where we can, or the journalism, investigative journalism would cover, not the traditional one, in order to exhumate as well as discover, unearth such elements in order to address it all. Addressing these should be on a specific subject. However, we have a large flow of information from Syria or about Syria. So we have been enthusiastic about it and using that as a stepping stone. We established it in 2016. We built a website as well as social media. We had a team and also other pillars for administrative and logistical foundation of our organization. SIRAJ, it started with a zero budget, and it has been this as it is through 3 years. It has produced 19 investigative reports, 4 workshops online and offline through the investigations that it has produced. How can you use this one? He's asking. Ahmed, could you please, you can continue speaking, Ahmed. Through the investigations, or over the past 3 years, we produced 13 investigative reports, and we had 4 training workshops for Syrian journalists, and we have changed different facts that have contributed to improve the lives of people and change different facts, but it has also caused the rise of some problems. These efforts are directed to people inside and outside Syria. In Syria, there have been large displacements, and we have also refugees in Lebanon, Turkey, Germany. They are making communities, and these communities are creating problems just like any other independent states. So we have been trying to be for this internally displaced Syrians, and Syria is divided into 3 regions. One is under the regime, the others is the opposition, and then the self-autonomy. Thank you.
We try to work in the three areas, from within Syria and from outside. We also, Siraj, with its investigations, has been able to compete on regional and international prizes and awards. All of this was zero budget. Regarding fundraising, which is what we're talking about now, I can summarize the work of Siraj in three main phases. The first phase was the first few months, the founding phase, and then the year after, and then in 2019. When we started with zero budget. And I remember that there were certain small things that we need to do, for example, when founding its domain on the internet, buying emails, publishing a brochure in Arabic and English, business cards. We paid for this from our pockets. So Siraj, as an organization, depends primarily on zero budget. And then we had a problem. How are we going to continue? Is that sustainable? During the years before founding it, we were founded in 2016, but between 2011 and 2016, there were 385 media outlets were established in Syria following the events in 2011. Most of them were not sustainable, so they closed. Some of them were able to get funding, others not. Some of them fell under pressure, so for many reasons they did not continue. We tried to look at those reasons in order to avoid them and be sustainable. During the first period of the establishment of Siraj, the founding members, myself and my colleagues, we are journalists, or we have media background. We started conducting investigative reports and publishing in Siraj. During the first year, each one started with 2 investigations, and we worked on them during the first year in order to have content within Siraj to show that we are producing and we are not just a brand name or an NGO that is not productive, because this happens a lot. And then we realized that we need to grow, we need to develop. At first, nobody knew about us. Then Syrian journalists started to know about us. We started with a workshop on basics of investigative journalism, and then a workshop about the relationship between gender and investigative reporting. And we got to know several Syrian journalists, and we started to announce that we are ready to receive and publish any investigative reports. That was the second step. But then we started communicating with organizations. For example, our colleagues in ARIJ, we collaborated with them, as well as other sites, Rasif 22. All of these are media outlets or websites within the Arab world, and we tried to work with the journalists to develop the ideas for investigative reports, to see how we can develop the idea further until it becomes completed and ready for publishing. And then we contacted publishers and media outlets. Can you summarize the challenge of fundraising so that Caroline can help you answer the questions that you have? Can you please summarize the challenges in fundraising as Siraj? Well, the fundraising challenges, I summarized them in 4 main challenges. Certain funders provide funding to NGOs or media that they have funded before, so they continue with their funding partners. So let's say they announce an annual grant for NGOs, and we fulfill all the conditions. They tell us, okay, so 80% of our funding is for previous organizations we funded and only 20% for new ones. And because of competition, our chances become almost zero to get this funding. The second challenge was internal. During the first year, we had a big problem of registration. We did not register legally in the first year. We registered the second year. So this is an advice I give to a new startup or a new company. Don't do anything before registration, because all the time before you register is like wasted time. So it's better that you start by registering, having a legal registration. The third challenge was that we don't understand the requirements of funding organizations or funders. Sometimes there's a announcement of a grant, and it seemed clear, and we apply, and then we find out that it was all wrong. Our application was wrong. We did not, maybe the grant guidelines are not always very clear to us.
نحن بمرحلة لاحقة
And then later on, a colleague volunteered to work with us. She was program director, and she started helping us writing proposals because she's more specialized. We as journalists, we know the funders, we know potential funders, we know how to contact them. But until now, we have not been successful in receiving stable grant or seed funding or constant funding. We usually get grants for a specific project, for example, or several or investigative reports about environment or about gender issues. So it's very specific, like 3 reports, 5 reports annually. So we would apply them and then divide the funds, the funding to cover production costs. But an organization that is always searching for funds will not be able to focus on its work. It means that it has to exert a lot of efforts in search for grants that will ensure its sustainability. So if the organization has seed funding, regular funding from a specific donor, it will allow it to focus on on training that has priority, on issues that have priority, and they can use the time that is used for fundraising to work on editorial issues. I'm not specialized in funding. I'm a journalist. I'm an editor. But this is what I noticed from our experience in the past 3 years. We tried to understand what are the obstacles to fundraising.
Well, the important thing is that you know that you need some support from outside, and I think it's good. Journalists are the ones who sell the program to the foundations and to the funders, so they're absolutely essential. But I think that you're wise to know that you need to bring in other counsel to help you understand those particular guidelines. I think that, I've worked with organizations that this seems to be the case actually with U.S. foundations. They tend to be sort of flavor of the month, and they'll fund things for a couple of years and then they'll discontinue it, and it's frustrating trying to keep up with that. But if you're going against global media aid organizations that support the same people over and over again, that I guess my first thought would be, just listening to the whole sweep of your story, it's impressive the sort of sense of trust that your audience has in you and your ability to be incredibly efficient with what you do on no money. So that's actually a selling point. I know that you need the support in order to make the investigations effective. I think you had spoken about doing the thematic grants. And I would just say, if you have any money that comes in, and perhaps if you have enough of an e-list or a newsletter list, I don't know exactly in terms of your registration and so forth, but doing some sort of crowdfunding or an incipient individual donor program. I mean, give me the donor button, I'll give you $500 right now. So I mean, I think that will give you some initial support. So no, I'm serious, absolutely. That will give you some initial support that will help you to dedicate some, if you can't get a development director, perhaps get a concentrated contract where someone can kind of rewrite your proposal or to kind of help you orient your work and your plans according to fundraising guidelines. Continue to make friendships with those aid organizations. And I guess once you seek some supports from embassies. You could try the embassy route to get some basic initial funding and say that you're going to use it. You've done these 19 investigations. You have a great reputation. You're doing great work. So that part of your reputation is, you're set in that regard. So I think if you seek some embassy support.
العدد لنهاية السنة 22. العدد لنهاية السنة 22.
22. Okay, sorry. Okay. So
لنهاية السنة.
20, I mean, look, you're already ready to go. So figure out how to seek some basic initial funding from embassies for planning, development assistance, accounting, maybe a consultant to do some strategic planning. And then if you're doing these thematic climate change, women, figure out how to budget so that you can recover more overhead or back office costs from those grants. And that will kind of help you to do that. I don't know your access to the Syrian diaspora. I know in the United States, I think that there are people whom, if you could research them and connect them, that they would be willing to support what you're doing because it's very important. You never know who has money. I would say that you should also leverage your publication partners. And perhaps this is the most important way to grow, is that your publication partners know that you do great work. I would suggest you start having conversations with them about having a joint foundation proposal submission that would have a piece carved for your work. Some of you may know the Solutions Journalism Network in the United States. They were starting a particular investigation on a subject, and the Atlantic, when I was working there, was one of the partners, and they carved off $70,000 specifically for the Atlantic's work. And then there were several other partners as well. So it was a big joint grant that everyone did different kinds of reporting into a larger project. So look at who your partners are, talk to them about joint proposal submissions, and then just kind of continue to build those individual relationships with all these people. But again, scale up gradually. I mean, listen to what Yasan said about, don't bite off more you can chew on that. Continue to work with the thematic funders, but make sure that you're getting enough support from them. And keep on telling the story. Once you've done the work, now you'll start attracting more support, and then you'll be able to kind of track the evolution of your organization. But I mean, it sounds very promising. Do you have any other questions for me?
Do you have any question?
Yeah, any other questions?
Yes, of course, I had a question. In general, can I have a clear explanation about the risks of fundraising, or what are the mistakes that startup organizations like ourselves can make while applying for funds? Or
Well, as you mentioned, you guys were very gracious to share with me a rejected proposal that you had, and the vision and the passion for your work really came across, as well as the sacrifice of the reporting. But some of this is in the writing, and I go back to the concept paper again, that you have to have a really clear description of the organizational structure, exactly who the personnel are, what you will do on the timeline. If I were a foundation person, I would have said, wow, this is very passionate, this is great work. But if I'm going to give, say, $20,000 or $2 million, exactly what is going to happen on which time frame and how much it costs. So doing some of that advanced research would make a better proposal, as well as, in-person meetings, and that'll help it to have a succinct narrative. So I think that's one of the risks that startups have, is that they have the passion for the subject material, and they come at it as a journalist, but there's just sort of, and this is where, if you get a certain amount of money, you can hire a sort of development professional to help you, break down some of those really confusing guidelines that you think you've got it right. And, I've done this to myself. I've applied for something that I thought I had it all right. And sometimes you just have to keep trying for that. In terms of other risks, my sense of, my most immediate sense of the kind of risk that Siraj will have is that you will seek the money, but go after things that are perhaps too challenging. Say, a larger grant, well, we'll do more, but you don't really have the capacity to do that grant. I think just, doing, again, to allude to kind of the recommendations that Yasan said, is start a small project, really acquit yourself well on that small project, be able to tell the story of the impact, and then continue the conversation into larger support. But I think that getting initial support from the embassies, perhaps some of the international thematic funders, if you can build budgets where you're able to cover your back office costs and editorial costs, and let's see, what was my third point there? Just to do the partnerships, I think, with your publication partners, seek joint support. That would be the best way to sort of build your reputation, and then you'll have sort of the reputation of conducting the grants as well. I think it's very exciting.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Ahmad. Now we just will give you 5 minutes of questions in this field, if anybody have a question. First,
And thank you. Thank you for talking about this important subject. I'm Jalal Uthman. I'm the CEO of the Libyan Association for Investigative Journalism. We're new in 2015 with a zero budget. We started with introducing the concept of investigative reporting in Libya. Libya journalism is very new. The first newspaper was established in 1966, but over 40 years of the Gaddafi rule, there was a kind of nationalization of journalism as well as a demonization of anyone who deals with the West. And this legacy still persists, and we are accused of being spies if we participate in any activity connected to international foreign organizations. I noticed that the donors do not have a strategy to enter certain countries that are absent from the field of investigative reporting. Nobody is asking why is there no investigative journalism in Libya, like Tunisia or Jordan or others? Because the donors, they have funds they want to get rid of in a competition to fund anyone who writes a good proposal. And this standard does not serve investigative reporting because we cannot write good proposals. We don't have contacts with the funders because of the security situation in Libya, and because we don't have the capacity, and because most journalists have left Libya and they are now working in channels that might be Libyan in name, and they are funded by other countries, in fact, and they are based abroad. So the problem now is that this year, we managed to produce 2 investigative reports in 2019. One about potable water that is not, in fact, potable, that is sold in the markets, and for those who do not have a nationality in Libya, living in Libya but who don't have the Libyan nationality. This had a very positive impact. Our colleague who wrote this report is present with us here. But when we talk with the funders or donors, we find it very difficult to talk to them, and we feel they don't want to fund anything in Libya. And now we want training projects. In production, we can overcome the financing obstacles. And as we said, we can self-finance our reports, but it's the training that we need funding for. One final point. I feel that Libya is being marginalized by the donors and marginalized by those who can actually develop investigative reporting in the Arab world. We succeeded in introducing investigative journalism in Libyan universities. A Libyan student, a graduate student, conducted an investigative report with funding from us, with support from us. There's a master's program supported by the EU. 4 of our board members, 4 or the 5 board members, will be teaching in this course, this graduate course funded by the EU at the Libyan University. So we have a lot of investigative reports. We've managed to support investigative reporting. 7 reports will be published at the beginning of 2020. So my question is, why do the donors refrain from heading to countries or going to countries where there's very little investigative reporting, and you wait for us to come to you?
That's very frustrating, which I suppose is not the thing you wanted me to immediately say. Do you have, okay, I have 2 thoughts here. Do you have an email list of people who are following your work? You need to get to know that email list in and out. Find who your friends are. Find who your friends are in other countries. Can you travel, and do you have a travel budget? No. Okay. Well, then I would say, and perhaps I can think a little more strategically about that. If you can get some funds to travel, I would say go to London, go to New York, talk to the funders, find people you know who can introduce you to the funders, and then I think the most effective thing for you to do would be to plead your case to those funders in person. They might not answer an email, they might automatically reject a proposal, but you're trying to sort of turn a tide here and try to create a dialogue where there is no dialogue. And I think that if you can just get some initial travel support, that would be a way to make some outreach into that. Also, sort of, look at your colleagues and partners around here. Who can you work with, or are there people who are in analogous situations that perhaps you could partner with on something? So, sort of knowing who your partners are. And you know, again, I keep talking about the diaspora. You know, there's a Libyan diaspora in the United States. If you can kind of do some research and make some connections there in terms of the support, in terms of the funder priorities, I think you're just going to have to keep educating them, and then finding analogies with other people who are working in similar countries in similar areas. I do know that, you know, activism works, that, you know, if you keep sort of demonstrating the excellence of your work, your ability to do something very efficiently. But again, I would get out there and I would go see those donors in person, go talk at conferences, you know, whatever you need to get that initial support to do that. Start an individual giving program with your email list. Make sure you can do some research on the people that you have, so who can advocate on your behalf, who can support financially your work. Anyone else?
أعتقد إحنا رح نضطر نروح للقسم الثاني من الورشة. إحنا رح نروح للقسم الثاني من الورشة اللي هو
which is related only. Miss Caroline will stay with us throughout the day and after this workshop, and we will dedicate sessions, individual sessions, for each of you who would like to develop themselves in the fundraising aspect. Also, I would like to inform you that, frankly speaking, we said we would do a workshop, but this is currently what is the most we can do. But we are present. All our capabilities are available to you at your disposal. The thing that I was most asked is from startup organizations. We are ready to start with you. Thank you, Caroline.
And his colleague, Ali Ibrahim. They want to talk about very relevant part, how to establish business planning for your organization, because I think they are very close to each other, fundraising and planning for your organization. You won't be successful in a part if you fail in the other one. So here you go, Bilal, you can start. Yeah.
Is this working? Yes. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks to the previous session for that interesting discussion. I'm going to ask everybody to stand up to make sure the mics are working and the translation is coming through, but also because I've also been sitting for an hour and I know what it feels like to be sitting for an hour. So sit down if you... Whoa. Sit down if you think that I am not an Arab. Okay, that's interesting. So I've been for the last 2 days suffering across this workshop. You can all sit down now, thank you. My name is Bilal Ranri, I'm from South Africa. I look very Arab, I have a very Arab sounding name, and for the last 2 days people have been speaking to me in Arabic, which I can respond initially, but once the conversation gets going, then I just get stares of shock, like, what do you mean you don't speak Arabic? So I want to apologize in advance for my inability to speak Arabic, and the rest of my presentation is going to be in English for that specific reason. I work for this organization, the Media Development Investment Fund, MDIF. We work across the world. We are a New York registered nonprofit ourselves, but we support independent media companies. The way we work is we do debt or equity financing. So that's either we're giving a loan to a business that's going to repay us with interest, or we're making an investment into a business that is operating for at least 3 years and profitable for at least 1. Am I too loud? Okay. And I bring this up just to set the context for what I'm going to share for the next 9 minutes of my presentation. Is we've got a lot of experience working with both small and big independent media companies doing great journalism across the world. And what I'm going to share here today are some reflections from our experiences, but with the big caveat being that in 2019, there is no one model that works across the board. There's some points that I will share with you that may resonate with some of your own organizations or businesses, but I am totally aware that not everything that has worked in Malaysia or in Indonesia or in Latin America is going to work in the Arab world. I'm setting the tone for this to say, see what inspiration you can get, what ideas our discussion here might spark, and I'm happy through the rest of the day in the coming days to discuss in further brainstorming ways for how some of this could be implemented. In addition to MDIF, we also run a program in South Africa. This is called the South Africa Media Innovation Program, and you can see there this is a program that's funded by Open Society Foundation for South Africa and Luminate. And the relevant part about this program that we're running, it's one of the few examples where our organization gives out grants. And what we're doing with this program is we're trying to bridge the gap between where organizations start up and rely on grant funding, but then mature and reach the point where they are ready for investments or ready for inputs in order to scale the organizations. And what we found is that the gap between where organizations mature from grant funding and where they're ready for investment has, over the number of years, widened. So through this program in South Africa now, we're trying to use the MDIF model, our approach, to try and close that gap. And there's, innovation is a broad term. Innovation means very different things, whether you a tech startup with, university graduates as founders versus whether you're a community newspaper that has been doing print for the last 20 years. Innovation would be very different things based on where you're coming from. So I was asked to discuss, what are sustainable business models, and I at the last minute put the slide up because I found a lot of the discussion when it comes to organizations that are relying on grants tend not to think the way any other business will think, and that's just three main elements: is like how much cash is coming into your business, how much cash is going out in the form of your expenses, and what remains. So even if the profits, if you look at, so you have $100 coming in, you have $99 going out, you have $1 of profit remaining, that means you're sustainable, right? The idea, the trick is to, as you increase the amount of revenue, the cash coming into the business, and mind you, this revenue could be in the form of grants. We're not excluding, for the purposes of this discussion and the model I'm looking at, a grant from any foundation or any other body is essentially for a non-profit organization or for-profit, it's revenue, it's money coming into the business. And this equation makes it super simple, is your objective is always to say how can you increase on the revenue side, while at the same time decreasing to whatever extent is possible on the expenses side, so that you have funds left over. So that could be funds just to continue your operations for the next 6 months if your donors disappear your next year. The number that we set when we're working with clients is we want to have a 3-year, in the best case scenario, you want to have 3 years for when you can continue to operate. You can continue to do your core programming without additional funding. Now, for 99% of the organizations, this is like, a really ridiculous far target. But unless you're setting targets, you're not going to be able to measure yourself. So if you're able to operate for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, up to 3 years, it's a good approach to take. Sorry. So if there's one message you leave from this session with today, from my perspective, is when you're looking at your revenue in your organization, you can start from something that looks like the one on the left, but you have to be moving across, right? If the type of organization you're in is one that receives only grants, then all the different pieces of the pie, can be grants. And the aim is that you're not, by some period of time, you're not reliant on one donor, one funder. Ideally, if one of these pieces, so for example, the blue on the extreme left is grants, and you've got some other products. So it could be, the red could be advertising in your case, the green could be events, could be services. You want to slowly have a plan, a very deliberate plan over time to start increasing those so that you're moving towards the image on the right. And this is something that I'm hoping Alia can reflect on a bit later with more specific examples. But the big question I always get asked is, okay, so, what is revenue? And there's a very limited approach you can take for any media organization. These are just some ideas. I want to bring some examples. So 10 years ago, Jay Rosen had this post up, right? It's looking at 20 sources of funding for media sustainability. One of them, number 14, being having a high-earning spouse. I'm glad there was a little bit of a laugh of that. But this is, okay, there's 21 reasons, one of them being having a high-earning spouse. Has anyone else been able to at least get number 14 right yet? No? Okay. About 5 years ago, the Slate put up this list, 76 ways to make money in media. I can share the links with you if you're interested. But the point I'm reaching, and then this is from a report looking at 52 ways to make money in media. I want to actually reduce it to only looking at that there's only 4 ways to make money in media. One way is to make money off your users, so your audience. And so that is advertising or sponsorship, where the main person in that equation is the advertiser. And what you're selling to the advertiser is your users. So whether you're doing advertising, banner advertising, native advertising, whether you get smart and get into programmatic, whether you're doing advertising in your newsletter, on podcast, whatever it is, the product that you have there is your user. And the main party in this equation is the advertisers themselves. A lot of organizations we see now, especially in the region, are doing this also using revenue coming from the grant bodies. So you have foundations, you have these big NGOs that have budgets. They want to reach your audience. You can get some money from them. The other way is you make money from your users. Now, I've heard this before, in the Arab world, people don't pay for news, or young people don't read print anymore, or like you have all these assumptions, and I'll get into that in a bit more. But there is different ways of making money from your users. Whether you're selling them subscriptions to your product, whether you're inviting them to events and they're buying tickets, whether they're just giving you their money because they like you, they like the work that you do, whether you're selling them caps and t-shirts or anything with your logo on it if you've got a brand that resonates with them, or whether you're selling them stuff, the e-commerce model, using the leads. Your users are, they're buying cars, so why not team up with a car dealership and sell them cars and get a bit of the commission. But in this case, is you're selling something to your users, either directly or indirectly. The next is you're selling the resources of your team. So it could be the technical skills because you've built a really good CMS and others want to use it. It could be the writing and editing skills that you have, video editing skills that you have. But it's an increasingly common way for media organizations globally to generate revenue by selling the skills and services that you and your team have. And one of the other organizations that were meant to be here, Info Times, Amr is sick, so he couldn't join us. But they're actually a really good example of an organization that is generating decent revenue from the services and the specialized skills that they've been able to build internally. And the final way to make money in a media organization is to sell ideas. So on the one end of the spectrum, this could be what many organizations rely on. It's selling the investigations or selling election information or health information funded by some donor who has an interest in this information being spread. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing great work across Africa with their health focus. In South Africa alone, we've got 3 organizations that are relying on them and doing great work. But there's also limitations to this model where you become very tied down to one donor. And also there's the negative part of this is where you're selling ideas, you're doing propaganda on behalf of political groups or big business. And if there's anyone who can see any other way for a media organization to make money that doesn't fit into one of these 4 pillars, I'd be happy to engage and learn more from that. Moving on, I wanted to talk about some of the assumptions that we hear. So as MDIF, we work with over 100 media businesses around the world. My focus is on Africa and the Middle East. And these are some of the things we hear on a daily basis. So number 1, print is dead. We've got an organization in South Africa now that is about to launch a new Sunday paper. In 2019, launching a Sunday newspaper. Can you believe it? In the region, there's Al Hudud, who a few months ago, I think they're on to edition 9, and their team, I don't see them in the room, but they were here. They've launched the Al Hudud as part of their subscription package. They launched a print edition that goes out once a month. So this idea that print is dead, the Guardian Weekly, they've been able to grow their youth audience. So between the age of 24 and 31, they've been able to grow it 3-fold by launching a print product on a weekly basis. So that challenges 2 assumptions. 1, that print is dead, but 2, that young people don't read newspapers. Young people only read on screens. And I think this is also, there's a lot of assumptions that we make in the newsroom. We say, oh, we can't do this because this. My response to that is, whatever it is, any idea, whether you do it or don't do it, needs to be based on data. In 2019, you need to be able to test it before you actually make a decision. The other is reader revenue or advertising. Which one is better? Now, we've looked at a recent study that looked at 33 media organizations. This is in Western countries, but the point is something that can translate. Is that it doesn't matter whether you're trying to generate revenue from your readers in the form of subscriptions or memberships, or whether you're going to go for an advertising model using banner advertising or native advertising. Why? Because it's the same 10% of users. It's 3%, which is now becoming like the global average. It's 3% of your total audience that could be willing to fund you in some way, through crowdfunding, through joining a membership, through joining subscriptions. But it's 10% of your users who are the heavy users anyways. The ones who are driving, if you have websites, driving the traffic to your website, generating the impressions that give you the advertising revenue or that your advertisers are interested in. So it's the same 10% bucket of people who give you 94% of your revenue anyways. So it's not really choosing between whether you want to do reader revenue, whether you want to do advertising. It's having a strategy that understands what your audience behavior is specifically and then acting on that. And the final point is there's tons of assumptions that we are making about audience behavior. You know, this thing that I just mentioned, young people don't read. The thing that, we need to be strong on social media because if people find us, they'll... yes, there's a lot of studies and stuff out there. But again, the point here is to make sure that you understand who your audience is. So this shift we're seeing gradually, and this is something that we're seeing amongst our clients, is you need to pay more attention to your loyal users. You know, those who are hitting your website directly through your landing page rather than coming through social, because the ones who are loyal to you, who visit your website every day, you need to start increasing that pocket in your broader audience, and then we can get into that a bit more. I want to also move on into what are facts, right? So what do we know about, and I've touched on this now, the heavy readers versus who are the possible payers who might contribute if you're doing a membership or something. The fact that direct audience to your website is better than social. And number 3, and this is something which I started with, is that not every lesson you learn from your competitor, from if you've got... So for example, we look at one of our clients that has 3 different platforms. And some tests that we do actually give us 3 different sets of results. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you're not getting useful data from doing tests, but that even if you're one publisher with 3 different platforms, you've got 3 different types of audiences, and each strategy for that needs to be customized for that specific audience. In terms of audience, customer data is key. Caroline mentioned it in the previous session in response to one of the questions. Like, you've got a mailing list. How much do you know about everybody on that mailing list? In 2019, we've learned the hard way that relying on Facebook for traffic to our websites, relying on the platforms and so on is super dangerous. We need to, as media organizations, whether you're a non-profit, whether you're for-profit, you need to know as much as possible about every single person. So fine, that's the target. What are the initial steps? There's some basic tricks that you can do. Is using the tools that are out there. So, for example, A/B testing is something we find that's super useful. Newsletters are big. In 2019, on average, news organizations in the West have over a dozen newsletters each. Anyone with a media organization here that has more than 5 newsletters? Okay, anyone with a media organization here that has newsletters, that you send a newsletter out? Yes. Okay, Lina, how many newsletters do you send out? How many different lists do you have? You have 2 lists. So the global average right now, and sorry to pick on you because I know you, the average, in more developed markets now is to have on average 12 newsletters. So that's a mix of the same newsletter going out, whether on a daily basis or weekly basis, or it's targeting different niches within your audience. The other benefit of newsletters is you can test stuff. So you can send out to one list. If you have a list of 100 people, you can send out to 50 people one type of newsletter focusing on one content, and to the other 50 something else, and you can see how this behaves. And with this, you can start tweaking the output so that you're getting maximum engagement. Looking at analytics, there's lots of tools, but also using surveys for the email addresses you have to start engaging with your users. So the Daily Maverick is one of the clients we work with in South Africa. They, in launching their membership program, they were expecting to say, okay, what are our users interested in? They want to get a Daily Maverick mug, and they want to be able to, switch off advertising on the website. These were the things. They sent out a survey to the users to try and ask them what, and they were totally surprised. The things that they were interested in: number one, the audience wants to engage with the journalists. They want to be able to come to events where the journalists are speaking. They want to be able to pitch stories and make suggestions for what type of stories they can cover. So my point with surveys is, we've seen this 100 times over and over, that journalists who are super smart, they know everything about everything, but they don't know anything about their users, and they have this reluctance to start engaging with them. I think it's something that we've carried over time, is our users are below us and we paid attention to advertisers. That relationship, the power dynamics have changed. Your readers now are your most important, and you need to be begging them to share their thoughts, to reflect and to move on. And I've got some takeaways here, but I won't repeat anything I've said. I'm going to keep the slide up with my contact details, and I'm going to invite Alia to, I can bring this to you there. Okay, I'm going to join you there. I'm going to give Alia this. I think there is a mic there, actually. We'll pick it up from there.
Okay. Okay, it's. Can you hear me? Okay, it's really nice to take after Bilal. We've had too many conversations over the years, and it's funny to pick up the conversation on a panel, actually, where we left it a while ago. Let me start by this. I know the name of my first slide is Making Nonprofit Newsrooms Sustainable. I represent ARIJ, which was initially registered as a for-profit media organization. A little bit of background first. ARIJ was born in, the concept of ARIJ started being developed in April 2016. And initially it was supposed to be funded by VC money, by investors' money. And this is why right from the beginning we were expected to put together a business strategy, a sustainability plan with all what that requires. ARIJ is founded by professional journalists who have been, on average, have at least 15 years in media organizations. There was no business person on that team, and the few months that we spent trying to develop a business strategy, right from the beginning, the question we were repeatedly asked, who is the business person? And there was no business person. We were like what Caroline mentioned earlier. As most journalists, we think what we're doing is so important, it's evident that we need to be doing it. Eventually, one of the things that happened is that out of 3 co-founders, we had to divide. One of the good things, actually, of approaching the whole thing as a business initiative is that we had to divide the work right from the beginning. Somebody took care of editorial, somebody took care of managing daily operation, and somebody needed to take care of business development, and that would be me. So I had to move from being a journalist for a very, very long time to being somebody who's taking care of fundraising and of writing a strategy and putting a pitch deck. So basically, putting the plan together took us almost a year and a half. We had to write a serious pitch deck with a narrative, with a mission, a vision, what ARIJ is about, the narrative. We had to learn all that because as journalists, all these things, like what mission means and what vision means and all these things, it required a lot of learning, things that we were not particularly interested in learning, but we really had to for the sake of making sure that this happens. After almost a year and a half of research and putting a strategy together, let me show you, like we had a document of like 50 pages of strategy and a pitch deck that really looked very fancy and nice, and we had to use the help of professionals from all kinds of industries, lawyers, financial analysts, PR people, all kinds of specialties to put together a pitch deck and a strategy. And eventually we sat with our donors and then our investors, and then we disagreed over the kind of journalism we want to produce. For them, it was impossible to produce what we wanted to do is impactful conversational journalism, what in our opinion is greatly needed in the Arab media landscape. This came at a great moment of frustration because of what was going on in the Arab world. We greatly believe in the importance of independent media, but our investors simply could not see eye to eye with us. They thought it was impossible to produce this kind of journalism, and second, there was no audience for such journalism. So the idea at that point was to work on a proof of concept, whereas we would go develop, seek grant money to show that first we can do this kind of journalism, second, it is in demand, and eventually once we have figured out what works in terms of revenues, we go back to scale. Once we've learned what needs to be learned, we launched in 2017, and I have to say, reaching out for partners, again, reaching out for people who share our values, making sure that right from the beginning we seek donors who very much share our values. In that sense, we developed what we wanted to do and went and sought money for that. It's not the other way around. We did not go for any money. We went for money that matched projects that we have already developed. So that made our life eventually much easier because it made our relationship with our donors much more healthy in a lot of ways. It's more a partnership than anything else. Now, with time, we launched on the fundraising part, and the development of the editorial concept and everything was really over the 18 months that preceded our launch. Everything was really going on together. We reached out for ICIJ. Like, one of our biggest frustrations as journalists earlier was that we could not be part of Panama Papers. For us as journalists in the Arab world, where the amount of stories coming out of the Panama Papers was immense, and no Arab newspaper or media would publish unless it's translated from English. Eventually everybody did, but it was translated from English. The fact that we could not be part of a collaboration of that size was immense. So this is why right from the beginning we reached out, and you were part of the Paradise paper. We launched on November 1, and on November 5 we published our stories from the Paradise paper. Right from the beginning, this gave us a boost related to our credibility, related to our brand, and little by little, we started with a network of 30 journalists, a co-team in Beirut of 6. We're now 300 correspondents, almost freelancers. Most of our writers, all of our writers are freelancers, but we have 300 writers in 50 cities around the world. We're very happy to see, at the beginning it was just our network of journalists and friends of journalists and people who know each other. Now it's great to see that young journalists come to us with great ideas. We've kind of succeeded in becoming a destination. First, because we're not local, we try a lot to work with local partners who do the kind of journalism that we also believe needs to be done at a local level, and then we help with the distribution. Now, as time passed by, we developed both, like our editorial strategy, the pillars, why we exist, our vision, our mission, they don't change. But what changes is we have a sense of adaptability that is very high in an ecosystem that is really quickly changing in our region. So we adapt quickly, but we know where we want to go. The fact that I think, for the sake of this session, the fact that we have a strategy, first, even in terms of grant writing, eventually, even in terms of pitching ideas, having this document makes even writing grants much easier, because it's a cut and paste thing. You have everything almost written in that document. So you've written it only once, and then it's, depending on what kind of application you're filling, it's in that document. It makes everything much easier, much faster. Another thing is that it really helps us, as journalists, we're always tempted to work on what's happening right now. We love that because we want to work on the best story that is happening now. Having a strategy makes it a little bit more difficult for us, because we have KPIs, we have targets that we have to reach. For example, here we have, we put this for ourselves, and we're actually, now some of the donors ask us for this, but it's good to have like how much we want to grow in terms of audience. More importantly, again, for the sake of this session, is these pies that Bilal loves so much. The first year, it's really funny, because in our case, the first year we had production money contributed almost 40% of our budget. At the time, we were not very busy running ARIJ, and this is why we could produce a documentary that we sold for a third party, and we got like 40% of our seed money from production, and 60% almost from grant money. The second year, it became much more difficult, because like all the co-founders and everybody on the team is very busy running ARIJ, so we could not produce. We, however, managed to keep some right now it's around 80% grants and 20% in consultancies, in production, and in others. I put it others here because we're being translated in other languages, and we get a little bit of money from that. The target, having a plan for 2021. Initially, we used to write the strategy for 1 year. Now we're writing the strategy for every 2 years. And the goal for us is, in 5 years, we don't want to get completely rid of donors' money, because really it's not just money we get. We get money, yes, but it's not the most important thing. We get a lot of partnership, we get a lot of ideas, we get a lot of networking through the donors. The idea is to reverse it, move from 80-20 to 20-80 in 5 years. That said, this is not to say that it's easy, because the ecosystem is really very complicated in the Arab world. We're at a moment where I'm personally I love this idea of not taking the assumptions for granted, because we are operating in a market that is full of assumptions that have not been tested for a very, very long time. Arabs don't read, we really don't know that. Arabs don't pay for money, nobody really, because they pay for gaming and they pay for entertainment. When it's high quality, they pay for it. And from the little experience we've had over this last year, we've been told over and over, we don't have the infrastructure to receive membership money or subscription money, because it's going to require resources in terms of time that we need to develop these things. And we decided we want to postpone that more and focus on things that we know we can do better on quicker. So we work on developing more on the production side, which is easier for us. And we really think it's, with time, we will go towards challenging the assumption that Arabs will not pay. Over the years, over the 2 years that we've been operating, we have a solid argument that they will pay if you give them something to pay for. They don't want to pay for something they can get for free in a landscape that is really oversaturated with news. But they will pay if you give them something worthy of their dollar they're putting. So at this stage, we're there. Again, the two things, it's not, if there is one point I could make here is as much as we're passionate about the journalism, yesterday Bilal mentioned something, journalists ask all kinds of questions, but there's one question they don't ask most of the time is, where is my salary coming from? And the fact that as much as I love and journalism is my passion, the fact that we're able of creating an independent media where we're very clear on answering this question, the money is coming from XYZ at XYZ conditions, and the journalists are really free. Like, the only thing we ask our journalists for is quality and obviously standards. But otherwise, it is a free landscape. This is the beauty of independent media. It's very small, moving forward very slowly, but I think it has a great future.
Technically, we ran out of time, but we are free to receive questions. Anybody also want to leave the room, he's free to do so. Anybody have, yeah.
Rita Falboom, Libyan Organization for Independent Media. Thank you for your presentation about your organization and the help you are providing to the media organization. I just would like to ask you a question, Bilal, about from my experience, what I've noticed, the donors, international donors to some Libyan organization are not selecting the right ones, or they're not evaluating the impact of those money poured in this organization. So my question is, what's your criteria for the money you give into these organizations working not just in Libya, I'm talking about all over the world. So what are the impacts of the work? How can you differentiate between the good work and the one with no quality? Unfortunately, I have seen that. I'm not talking in your organization, but in general.
I mean, I totally get the point. Do you want to take a few more questions at once, or?
Okay, but did you get my question?
I got your question, and I have a very good response. I just want to see if there's any similar questions, and then we can respond together.
وهيب النصاري رئيس تحرير منصة المشاهد منصة مستقلة. بس ممكن
المشاهد, which is an independent site. I just want to introduce the site, and afterwards I want to ask a question. How can we get funding now? In Yemen, we have a problem. There are big organizations. We cannot compete with them, these media organizations. We are a startup platform. In addition, most organizations or most funders, when you have regional funders supporting, for example, if we have a regional funder, others will refuse to fund us because we're getting funding from them, and they think, okay, we're their people. And another problem is that most international funders or international organizations like to deal with personalities, well-known media personalities locally. And this is a difficulty that we face in Yemen. We will listen to the last question and then we'll release you. We are all here until the end of the conference, and after the conference, our plan for next year is to work with organizations, media organizations in the region. We don't have conditions. We don't have predefined conditions. Your needs are the starting point for us. Last question. Khattab Aziz from Stokely Organization for Development. We conduct monitoring and observation. We noticed that some organizations get sufficient funding, a lot of funding, but the beneficiaries do not provide quality work. If you want to ask them for a bank statement, for example, or if you want to evaluate or monitor, they refuse. They have techniques to remain completely in the dark, to keep people in the dark about how they spend their money. In brief, what I want to say is that many organizations, they have many funders, they have a lot of money, but they are not transparent. They are not transparent in terms of how this money is spent, and at the same time, they are not even transparent enough to convince us that this money has reached its target or beneficiaries. So there are problems. At the same time, there are startups, there are new small organizations. If they get a small fund, they will definitely have a better output. And I see certain organizations that have reached old age. They should die and wither soon. But if they have a big funder, they continue to work. But at the same time, you find a lot of passion, a lot of energy in other organizations in the field, but they don't get funding and they die.
Oops. So thanks for those questions and apologies. As I said, I'm going to respond in English. And for me, I think it's like one big question, right? The issue from Libya, Yemen, and I'm not sure which specific region.
Iraq.
Iraq.
The most complicated countries.
So I want to just clarify. While my organization is a non-profit, we operate as a conventional fund, right? And that's because we believe that even in 2019, media can still be businesses. And as I said, in my presentation, there is no one model. So we've got in Zambia a radio station that is funding their journalism through a cafe, totally non-related to the media side. But who's to say that that's not a good model in 2019 for providing quality media? I think the questions, and there can be a whole, and there's probably are sessions at this conference and others around the issue of donor-funded journalism, and this basic idea that in some cases, not all, in fact maybe it's just few, where the job of the donor is to tick some boxes. So did we support media in X country? Tick. Did we spend our budget? Tick. And while some organizations are becoming more strategic about how they deal with this and find the right partners, for an organization like ours, we are super careful about who we work with, because we've got a global portfolio of over 100 media companies. So anyone, and in fact, I'm here to also look for new business. Someone here can say, you know what, we need a small loan, $20,000, $30,000. We would look quite deeply into who the organization is, who are the people behind that organization. We take the independence very seriously, so no links to political parties, no links to big business groups. But also the other question is a lot of organizations that have access to this easy money, this money coming from the donors, saying, why should I take a loan from you for $30,000 and pay back this loan after a 1-year grace period with 7 or 8% interest, where I can get $50,000 from some foundation if I just write a nice grant. And my response is, if this is the type of organization, if your organization is the one that wants to move towards being able to produce quality work, operate independently, not have to chase what the donors are interested in funding and moving from pillar to post. This is why you want to work with someone like us. Because we're not going to really, we're not looking at, necessarily the big name or the flashy work that you're doing, or that it's going to be Panama Papers or something. We're saying that if your audience is a small village, and that village needs information, and that information that you're going to provide is going to, promote democracy and better governance and so on, then you are our perfect client. And on the other hand, if you're the Mail and Guardian in South Africa, which is our client, or Rappler in the Philippines, or Malaysia Kini in Malaysia, etc., they range from tiny to massive organizations, but the common thread amongst all is that, yes, producing quality journalism, serving their communities, and doing so in a model that fits their business. So I know I may not have... Okay, Alia.
احكي بالعربي. بعتقد في نقطة أساسية، نحن إذا الهم تبعنا إنه بدنا نعمل صحافة مستقلة، موافقين كلياتنا على هذا الموضوع. حتى الأموال اللي بتجينا من الدونرز ما بتجعلنا 100% مستقلين، هيدي أموال هلا نحن في أجندة مشتركة، بس على المدى الطويل هيدا مش استقلال. العمل لأنه نكون عندنا استقلالية مادية أساسي باستقلاليتنا. الارجيومنت اللي الواحد بيقدر يعمله انه نحن بمحل بالعالم العربي البحث عن الاموال موجوده، يعني نحن مش منطقه ما فيها اموال. الفكره هي كيف بدنا نقدر نحصل على جزء منه بانه نعمل بزنس موديل. يعني الفكره انه نشوف شو اللي مطلوب ونعمله، مش بالصحافه. المؤسسات الضخمه بالعالم عم بتشوف شو بدها تعمل لتقدر تكون منتجه وناجحه اقتصاديا. بالنسبه لنا اليوم الانترنت عليه 6% حجم المتكلمين باللغه العربيه على الانترنت 6%، والكونتنت حجمه 1%. يعني في طلب على المضمون الجيد هائل، وهيدا المضمون بدنا يعني التحدي اللي عندنا اياه مع استخدام الاموال اللي بتجينا من الجرانتس خلال الفترات الاولى. طبعا يعني ما فينا نبلش من فراغ، بس يعني هيدا التحدي اللي عنا اياه. واذا ما حطينا بعقلنا انه نحن بدنا نوصل على استقلاليه ماديه خارج مساعده الدونرز، بنضلنا بناخذ بنكبر الحجم الانفاق تبعنا، بنزيد عدد الصحفيين، بنزيد عدد القراء تبعولنا، بنكبر الصرف تبعنا. بس في امكانيه، وهيدا الشيء بده يبلش من نقطه انه نحن عم نفكر كيف بدنا نعمل هيدا. يعني هيدا تحدي بنطرحه على حالنا، واحسن نطرحه بكير من بعدين، لانه بنكون روحنا فعلا بس تركب شيء بصير صعب تغيره بعدين. من الاول بعتقد لازم الواحد يكون عم بيشوف يفكر بهيدي الطريقه. لو بده يبلش بدونرز ماني، يشوف كيف بده يوصل على سستينابيلتي على المدى الطويل.
شكرا لك عليا. ثانك يو بلال. الساعه قاربت ال11، فأعتقد أنه إحنا خلصنا وتجاوزنا الوقت. طبعا إحنا جاهزين لتلقي أسئلتكم بعد الورشة وخلال المؤتمر زي ما حكيت. ويعني بدي أحكي خبر يمكن يكون سعيد، بس مش وعد، بس هو تقريبا
not be a promise, but it's in the works. After this conference, after the conference, we are convinced that if we want to have sustainability, we have to have a full package that includes funding and editing and also administrative and logistic support to the different organizations. We're trying to work on this project. Please stay in touch with us, because the more data we have from you, the more information we have from you, the better we will be able to develop something that is more suitable to your needs. Thank you.